So you're very welcome to Duco Gym Live. We are going to have another talk with Martin Forde. So thank you very much for joining us. I'm Jamie Marsco from Duco Gym, and we really are delighted that you've taken the time to join us again today. And if you're watching this later, we honestly hope you enjoy it. Any questions that you have during the stream, please do put them onto the feed. We will be able to see them. They should pop up. And once again, I'm going to bring in Martin. Martin, thanks again for joining us. How are you today?
Well, it's great to be here, Jamie.
Great. So we were talking beforehand, and we said that today that we would cover protein because it's sort of the next stage when people are beginning any type of program. We're always looking at their insulin levels because that covers such a huge plethora of health issues. And then if we can get people to understand the role and the importance of protein, then we know that has an enormous effect on how people are feeling, energy, health, immune system. So I'll give it over to you, and you can introduce the topic.
Well, young guys and maybe young girls think about protein in terms of muscle and being firm and being in good shape, and that's a good way of thinking about it. But people who are just a bit older may also have to consider that their immune system is involved with protein. It's a matter of protein, and their brain is a matter of protein. The amino acids in the protein feed your brain. They cause the neurotransmitters to work, and they create the environment for an effective working immune system. Jamie, I can't see you. Are we still online?
Absolutely. I when I want to put you front and center, I make you the star of the show.
Oh, I appreciate it.
That suits me a lot better. So yeah, no, it's great. This new system that we use, that you can obviously see what is streaming, which makes it much easier. So absolutely. So we were talking about the amino acids and protein as sort of the overall topic being the glue. So what do we mean by that exactly?
Okay. Well, obviously we have muscles and we have sinews and we have, what I said, neurotransmitters and various elements to do with the immune system. But your whole body is held together by a very fine form of protein. For the moment, we can call it the glue, right? Now, don't think of it as something inert. I can come to that in a minute. We don't need it to be inert. We need it to be alive. This glue needs to be alive. Yeah? And when you build it properly, it will be alive. And it's a functional thing. It actually protects your body. It stops bad things getting in, right? And it creates an environment where you can have a robust immune system. And it holds the body very well together. So eventually, this is where your firmness can happen. Your muscle cells can pick up the proper amounts of protein and everything works properly. The most important thing about this so-called glue is that it lets oxygen in properly.
Right. Okay.
It has to let the oxygen pass in. And that is both a passive and an active process. It's very important that there high amount of life is maintained in that glue, because what can happen, what does happen, is that the protein elements of the glue, they become what we call glycated. You've talked about high insulin levels. If you let that happen, the blood sugar, if the blood sugar is high, even at various times during the day, that binds to the fine proteins we're talking about, and it turns it into dead glue. Okay. Hard dead glue that doesn't do anything for you. So you need to construct your body out of this fine material that holds everything together, and it actually is your defense from an immune point of view.
Okay, so maybe just so we understand this, the idea of glycation, what exactly happens, or how does glycation come about?
If you put sugar together with protein, then they bind together into an inert substance, very hard to break down. Now, this happens when you cook food. Even the crust on bread is made of this inert substance. And properly speaking, we might say, oh, don't eat the crust. Don't eat anything that is crusty, that has the protein bound to sugars in that way. You know, when you fry on the pan, sometimes you get a sticky, sugary residue on the pan. People make a sauce out of it. That's somewhat doubtful. Now, your body has defenses against eating these things, but in perfection, you mightn't eat any of them. Okay. But the trouble is that your body also, if you have high blood sugar levels, that blood sugar can readily combine with the proteins, all kind of proteins in the body, and literally deaden them. And they become a dead residue in the body. It's one of the ways of building up wastes. This is well known to doctors, by the way, because for diabetics, they test for this all the time.
Okay. Okay. So in terms of protein then, maybe just giving people an overview of the importance of protein in terms of training and in terms of doing an exercise program, and then also covering the fact that as a person ages, they're going to have a requirement for protein. So what is protein exactly? What does it break down into?
Protein is made of amino acids, about 20 different kinds of amino acids, commonly found in protein. And the reason you eat protein is largely to get those amino acids in. Your body breaks down the protein, uses the amino acids to make up your own proteins. That's what it does. Okay. So every tissue in your body is actually dependent on you taking in the amino acids. Now, to be fair, you only need, strictly speaking, only need to take in 9 of them and you make up the rest. However, making up the rest could be something of a strain in the body. Correct. So there's a lot of merit in being able to take in the full range of amino acids. However, the biggest merit is in taking foods that are really high in those essential amino acids. And this is where people tend to favor, things like meat, fish, eggs, and cheese, which are the highest in those essential amino acids and provide more protein. Now, we could look at what happens in a meal in terms of the content of protein. And before we talk about how much protein you need, can I just illustrate this to you? That if you have a meal, maybe it could be, let's call it steak and a salad. Yeah? Now, the steak is 20% protein, and the salad has very small amounts of protein and small amounts of carbohydrate. If you leave it at that, then you've got a meal that's nearly 50% protein. If you have steak and cooked vegetables, now because of the carbohydrate in the vegetables, and you don't have so much protein, your protein content in that meal could go down to 15, could be up to 12%.
Really?
You have that meal, and then you eat a dessert afterwards. Okay, you might have a chocolate bar or something, right? Whatever you have. Now you've diluted the protein content in that meal much, much more. And you might be down to 5 or 6% protein in the meal in comparison to all the calories in the meal. That's a different way of thinking about it, Jamie, and I hope it might be helpful for some of the Educa Gym clients to think that when you add stuff in, now you're diluting the protein. Okay. Now, a really good way to go in the opposite direction is take a nice chocolate protein dessert, a real cocoa protein. You can mix that up and make a dessert out of it. Yeah? And now you're going in the opposite direction. You're increasing the protein content of that particular meal. Now, if you can increase the protein content in general in your diet, you will see results. You'll particularly see faster results from your training.
Okay. So is it because it's as a percentage, so the protein as a portion of your overall meal drops because the volume, as you add in other foods that have lower protein content, you're lowering the overall percentage. Is that the way it works?
Summarized. Yeah, exactly. Now, that's how people, that's, I believe, the pitfall that people may find themselves getting into. And if you dilute the protein content, it's like diluting your vitamins or something. You've heard of empty calories, where people drink soft drinks all day, and they dilute the amount of vitamins coming into the body. So in a sense, you can have calories that are relatively devoid or relatively low in protein.
Okay.
And that's one pitfall not to fall into. So if you can get into the habit of not diluting the protein, but also boosting it. And this is where some of the supplements might come in really well. And the casein protein, as I say, it's a delicious way of doing it. You can also take the amino acid tablets. If you're training, then amino acid tablets, 5 of them gives you the protein of an egg. And that is another really good way of bringing up the protein content of a meal instead of diminishing it, as you might if you take in other things.
Okay, so we've touched on it there then. So we've got the quantity of protein is important, but the quality is very important. And that is down to, what would we say, the concentration of the 8 or 9 essential amino acids. So that effectively will dictate how much protein that you'll absorb. Is that right?
Well, it does. I mean, the availability of those amino acids dictates how much of the protein you eventually use. This is very, very true. Just can I say something here? This bit of investigation that I've been doing, and that is much is said about vegan diet and vegetarian diet. I would recommend to people that they want to be a vegetarian that they consider using dairy protein, such as the casein that we recommend in Educacheck. Why do I think that? Because it's very hard to get the protein from the vegan diet. Now, I was looking at, you see a lot of material on the web about the diet of the Shaolin monks. They are vegetarians, vegans, indeed. And did you ever notice that they tend to be young enough? And I looked into longevity, although the diet is touted for longevity, it does not provide longevity noticeable to even them. And they surveyed the heads of monasteries and this type of thing, and they found that the life expectancy is certainly no better than what we would have with ordinary people in Ireland. So you have to be careful of advice given by white people as to a longevity diet. That's my conclusion on that.
Yeah.
I say that you watch your protein, try to get the protein in, try to get it used properly in the body by not messing it up with excessive fast carbohydrates. Slow carbohydrates, yeah, they'd be good. We can maybe talk some other time about what they are. But, the balance of protein, carbohydrate, and fat in the diet has something to benefit you here. That if you can actually increase the protein somewhat, then that is a plus in general. And the way, I mean, how do you do it? You do it maybe with a little protein supplement, whether it's amino acid tablets, or you can use protein foods like peanuts, which if you take them with other foods, for instance, if after a meal you have a handful of peanuts, then generally, even though peanuts are not one of these high-class proteins, it will be taken with the rest of the meal, and it will tend to complement one another.
Okay.
So there are different ways of supporting your protein intake instead of diluting it.
Okay. So if we're looking at the main functions of protein, obviously it's forming tissue in the body, but it's also digestive enzymes, your immune system, neurotransmitters, then obviously the tissue in the body. So it's really, I always think of it when we're talking to clients, it's considering amino acids and protein, it's like the building blocks of life. So you must have protein in your diet. You can certainly do without carbohydrate for a certain amount of time. You certainly can do without some types of fats. There are some maybe essential fatty acids, but protein is just so essential just for normal functioning, for energy, for life force. That's all going to rely on protein, right? So
now, having said that, yes, beg your pardon, Jamie.
No, go for it.
Okay, no, just I would say yes on that for sure. And then you'll catch me on some other talk saying, well, let's do a fruit diet, or maybe even do some fasting and that type of thing. In those environments that there isn't any protein, if you follow that kind of a diet for a time, there's no protein, that's all right to do, particularly if you know about protein and you're able to build it up afterwards, or you're able to maybe incorporate some training in your diet.
Yeah.
And that would make a difference as to how well you pick up and retain the protein. Retaining the protein is where it's at. It doesn't matter if you lose a bit of protein from time to time if you know how to build it up and retain it.
Yeah.
You understand? Yeah. So it's the consciousness of being able to hold on to that protein. Just to recap with you, Jamie, could I just say that the typical person will lose a percentage, maybe 1.5% of protein every year after the age of 35, 40, whatever it's to be. And that leaves them at the age of maybe 55, 65, 70, protein depleted. Most people fall into that, and very few people don't.
Okay.
So therefore, if you know how to hold on to your protein and you can reverse that process, then you'll tend to win in the longevity and the anti-aging stakes.
Okay, brilliant.
And for general life, because your energy will be good if you can support your glands, support your, as you pointed out, digestive enzymes, and support the neurotransmitters in your brain, which are amino acid dependent, and the structure of your brain, which is 40% protein anyway.
Wow.
So you don't need any of that to shrink or go away.
Okay, great. Right. So that is obviously a key point, and something that we talk to clients a lot about when they start in the gym, is that between 30 and 60, they're going to lose about 30% of their muscle mass. And it's really down to this protein depletion. So if people are thinking about this, so how much protein then are they going to need on a daily basis to, I suppose, either slow down that rate of depletion or even stop it altogether, or and what other activities can they do that's going to help to reverse or slow down that process?
Okay, just for a moment, let's talk about protein requirements, if I may.
Definitely.
And the official protein requirement is in or around 60 or 70 grams a day, right? In or around that. Now, in completely unstressed situations, people can get into a balance with protein at about 30 or 40 grams a day. And even the official recommendation takes allowance for the fact that every stressful moment we have depletes protein. Every stressful thought depletes protein. All the activities we do every day tend to deplete protein, so they boost it a little bit. But I say that's not enough, because look at older people, and they're all depleted in protein, except the ones that take your advice, Jamie, right?
Yeah,
And do the
exactly.
training and follow the good diet. So in general, you're going to get this protein depletion so much, not only in the muscles, where the muscles are, they can get non-existent, soft or whatever, and then the tissues themselves can fall apart because the glue isn't being made properly. And so you get a lot of water retention in between the tissues. The immune system isn't very effective at that point,
Yeah.
and people become prone to things in a way that they shouldn't.
Yeah.
And various cells, various bacteria, and this type of thing, viruses, can travel to the body more readily if this glue is not working. It's protein-based. So, I believe that people should consider taking a higher amount of first-class protein in their diet, whatever way they get it, whether it's a supplement or by eating more of the high-class meat, fish, eggs, cheese, also brown rice, very low in protein, good quality though, and also oatmeal, that's quite good.
Oatmeal, yeah.
Don't recommend soy protein to speak of. So some of these things can be very, very useful. Vitamins have protein, but they need to be complemented with something like, preferably something like oatmeal or some other really good starchy type protein food.
Yeah.
Now, you can't be high quality stuff leading off with eggs,
Yeah.
right? Get down to any kind of protein, such as casein, etc. So they should feature in the diet if you're lactose vegetarian. If you want to be a vegetarian, very successful at this, and over vegetarian works very, very well.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So, in the nutrition surveys, although recommendation for protein is 58, 59 to 70 grams,
Yeah.
people tend to take 100 grams. Men in particular tend to take 100 grams of protein. However, not all of that is first-class protein. So I'd say then, if you take a normal diet and add in maybe 30 grams of protein, which is the equivalent, frankly, of one protein sachet that you have there. And there's other ways of doing it. It doesn't have to be a protein sachet. If you add extra protein in, it could be an extra can of tuna. It could be an extra egg or two. It could be, you can imagine the way that it could be a slightly larger steak or a slightly larger portion of fish than you might be normally inclined to take. And if you do that, then you've increased your protein content. And that is a number one step to holding on more protein. Now, it's not the only way. Increasing protein content is not the only way to hold on to the protein as you get a bit older. But it's an important part. It's one part that shouldn't be neglected.
So are we looking at, because I know if you look at certain studies, they're recommending anywhere from maybe about 1.6 grams per kilogram up to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight in terms of quantity of protein. So in terms of if a person wants to know very quickly, what does that look like on my plate over the course of a day? what could we tell them? Because sometimes people just want the practical information. Because it's
completely, it needs to be in practical terms. That's why I'm saying that if Jamie, you know that if we say take 2 grams of protein for every pound of body weight, right, or 1 gram for every pound. I'm so sorry, right, 1 gram for every pound, which is the equivalent of 2 grams per kilo, roughly speaking. It's hey, good trainers will do this, but you have to set your mind to it. Yeah. Now, in an ordinary everyday sense, if you can get up to 1.5 grams, then hey, you're going to be doing well. So if you're say a lady of say 130 pounds, then you might be aiming at 130 grams. Or if you're a guy of 170 pounds, you might be trying to aim at 170 grams. Whether you get it, I don't know, but you can get it. If you even got half of that, it will produce a big difference in your physique, your well-being, your fat levels, your energy for training, and your prospects for growing older, if I might say so, right? So how do you actually add in the extra protein? The way you might add it in is that instead of having a carbohydrate breakfast, you have a carbohydrate plus protein. You reduce the carbohydrates, increase the protein. So you can have a couple of eggs. You could, if you wanted, have a little bit of canned salmon or tuna with that, if you feel like it. If you're into the muscle building, you probably will feel like it. At lunch hour, maybe you can have a salad, and instead of having kind of wrap or carbohydrate or whatever, increase the protein content of that. And you can maybe have some kind of dairy product. It could be cottage cheese. It could be a protein shake or a protein drink of some kind. In the evening, you can have your dinner, and then maybe you can have, if you want my suggestion, some kind of a dessert based on the protein. Now, you've probably, and you can use the idea of taking peanuts and nuts in general, right? But peanuts are particularly high in protein, and amino acid tablets during the day. Now, that's kind of the way that I would suggest you approach it. And soon you're up to about 50% more protein than the person would normally take in their diet. And that's what tells.
Yeah, you'll notice all sorts of differences to health, energy, immune system. You'll notice you'll get firmer. As soon as you start getting firmer, you'll notice that your waist will start shrinking. And, other options I think people take for breakfast. I've noticed people like using that casein protein drink, and they mix it in maybe with porridge, or they have it on the side with porridge in the morning, or yogurt, cottage cheese with berries in the morning is very good. If you were worried about fat, egg white omelets can be very good. Or egg white omelets with some type of protein mixed into it. If a lot of people would like to do something like that in the morning. Scrambled eggs are very quick, because people are often worried about time taken. There are loads of different options. So let's say if we looked at something like 3 eggs in the morning, that's around 15 grams of protein. If we looked at 100 grams of tuna, which is a small tin, that's about 25, 30 grams, isn't that right? And then for dinner, if you were having maybe a couple of darns of salmon, or if you were having a steak, we're probably looking maybe at 40 to 50 grams of protein. So you can get to.
Can I address that dinner bit? Because many people will take, the portion that's allotted in the supermarket, and you might say here, 2 darns of salmon, we're going to have one of them, right? No, you need 2. You don't only need at least 2. So I would say, particularly in the evening, try to increase the protein level in that meal. And people probably take too small of a portion of protein. Certainly some of the ladies may find themselves in that position. And so if it's fish you're having, which is wonderful food altogether, then just take more of it. Take more at the expense possibly of some of the other elements of the meal, if that's what you want to do. So the protein is what will count in the long run. And remember, the protein feeds your brain. That if you can have the protein and not let the blood sugar surge, then it's going to be a net benefit to your body, including your brain. But if you let the blood sugar surge too much, then it tends to bind the protein and turn it into this inert substance.
Okay, right. And because people often think, wow, that sounds like a lot of food. I'm not used to eating that amount of food. But it can be often like this. What you eat today works for you tomorrow. And I've noticed that your body very quickly adjusts to taking the increased levels of protein, doesn't it? I mean, you can feel full the first couple of times, and then very quickly, then that's the actual amount of food that you seem to need. And I know that there's a very good, strong thermogenic effect by taking protein, which means that when you eat protein, there's quite a lot of calories are used in the breaking up or the breaking down of the protein and the using of it. So it's not like you suddenly take in all these extra calories and that you're going to gain weight. Protein, it doesn't seem to work like that when you take in extra levels of protein. Wouldn't that be right?
Very good, Jamie. Yeah, well expressed. But I'm just saying that you're looking at a substitution strategy here. That if you really look at the type of diet the ordinary people eat, sorry, excuse me, I shouldn't be saying quite like that, but the ordinary person will eat a diet that has a lot of elements in it that they don't need. They'll have elements of a little too much bread, a little too much carbohydrate, a little too much this, that, and the other, treats here and there, and all the rest of it. So we're endeavoring to say, look, let's get some amino acids in instead of all of that, or instead of some of it. And as a result of that, then you're going to win.
That's right. So Jackie just making a good point, Jackie Murphy in Ennis. And what about chicken, Martin? Just because might as well cover that. It's not a source of protein that we would typically recommend that people take large amounts. Why is that?
Even if you get the best free-range chicken, it tends to be more bacterial than other forms of meat. Now, I'm not saying that good organic chicken isn't any use. I'm not saying that, right? The trouble is getting the right quality. The chickens have been bred to be, frankly, a degenerated form, right, of fowl. Yeah, and I'm not sure that you can get the quality that you would want in all of that. Unfortunately, antibiotics are still a problem in regard to chicken, and bacteria are still a problem. They have not solved this problem. And many times people who eat a lot of chicken in their diet find that they cannot escape the effects of the bacteria and the antibiotics. Evidence for that is that recently they found a lot of antibiotics in groundwater, even in Ireland, where they're not supposed to use antibiotics. However, any kind of a sneeze on the part of any chicken would be treated with antibiotics in the whole herd, I understand. And sadly, this is what's happening. So when you buy the chicken down in the supermarket, not only may it be covered in certain kinds of bacteria that you don't want, I mean on the outside in the packaging even, that can happen, but also it may have been treated with stuff you don't want, basically. Now, on the other hand, if you were to choose fish from the sea or choose meat that's been out on the grass, then you're looking at a very different type of food.
And then there's the addition of certain hormones, etc., to grow chickens faster. Because I mean, it's very much like a commodity, and if you think about it in business terms, you're trying to grow something as fast as possible in as small a space as possible, with as low an amount of money spent on feed, etc. So you're going to. It's not necessarily that you're cutting corners, but you're certainly going to try and increase your margins. And when you're
we're told, Jamie, that the hormones have been banned for a few years now in the EU, which good enough. But a lot of chicken comes in from outside the EU, as you know, and the inspectors can't be there all the time, Jamie. Do you know? I mean, I probably think that they don't use the hormones here in Ireland, most likely because it's tight enough now. But they're also, with Brexit and this type of thing, they're thinking about bringing in hormone-laden chicken from the States. And not, we don't know what gets into the food chain, really. I do know that a lot of chicken comes in from Asia into the EU. And although it's supposed to adhere to this standard and that standard, then perhaps we need somebody's guarantee that actually happens.
So, got a question. What about rabbit meat? I mean, I know from my personal point of view, eating game is... I love it, and I find I get great energy from it. But what would you think about something like rabbit meat?
Well, I presume it's okay. I presume it's okay. It's not something I eat myself. Yeah. But hey, you may be down the country, you can get rabbits. Hey, why not?
So what other factors do we have
very
to
lean, by the way. Rabbits are
incredibly
lean as a meat. Look up rabbit starvation and you'll see about it. That's where In the Indian tribes in North America, they tried to live on rabbit. At times, they would live on rabbit, and they wouldn't be well as a result of that because there wasn't enough fat in it. Yeah. However, that won't happen if you just have it one day.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so what other factors do we need to consider then with protein retention? Obviously, I want you to mention training because I think that's going to make such a
protein
difference.
retention is mediated through your hormones. I mean, it's basically mediated through your hormones. It's a beneficial cycle in a sense that if you can keep up your protein content, your glands will retain their size and their activity to a greater extent. They will tend to do that. For instance, your thyroid gland, you need protein for your thyroid gland to work at all. You know, for your adrenal glands, for the gonads, for, pituitary gland, they are protein dependent. So if you can keep up your glandular output, then the products of those glands tends to retain protein. So therefore, if you have good adrenal glands, good gonads, good pituitary gland, then that will tend to create conditions where all the tissues of the body are forming properly. The signaling in the body will be form protein properly. And as a result, then you retain the excellent protein structure and well-being that you had when you were about 25 or so.
Great. And then training? Weight training.
Well, yes, indeed, training. I mean, we may be preaching to the converted here, Jamie, but high intensity weight training that you do for 15 minutes, 20 minutes at a time is the most efficient way. But, what you would do is you can't overtrain, or you're not supposed to overtrain. So therefore, if you're training your arms, you train them once a week. And that's not overtraining. If you train your chest, you train it once a week, or your legs once a week. And the cycling that you do, the cycling of exercises you do in the Duca gym respects that. And as a result, without overtraining, you apply high intensity exercise to certain muscle groups once a week. And that is optimal for protein retention. When you exercise, it's the hormones that respond to the exercise that cause the protein retention. So therefore, the limited stress, the controlled limited stress of your exercise session causes your adrenal hormones, your growth hormone, your the other natural steroid hormones in the body to rise somewhat and to cause your tissues to fill out and to form properly, including this intercellular glue that I'm talking about, and the glue that holds your brain together.
Great. So training to be smarter. That makes sense. So when you talk about cycling, we mean how we rotate the different exercises and the different body parts.
Make it clear then. Clearly, one day you'll do your arms, one day you'll do your chest, one day you'll do your legs, roughly speaking. And that's how you cycle through working on the body. Now, having said that, come on, there are many types of exercise, and everybody likes to do their favorite type. And we can't discourage anybody from doing their favorite type, with one possible caution, and that is extremely extensive exercise, like let's do a marathon, can actually be very depleting on the body. So we have to be super careful not to radically overdo the idea of exercise. Yeah. So other than that, then we can kind of have fun in a sense, right?
And if you were to recommend one type of exercise for to help with protein retention, one exercise on its own, what would you think would really generate?
On its own? You mean doing heavy squats once every 10 days?
Great idea.
Is that the one you're talking about? Yeah. Well, again, if you can do that, then that will bring up the requirements for protein retention massively in your system, and you might have to do any other kind of exercise. I personally would notice that if I do that, I can run much better. I have no trouble running up and down the street. Now, I don't run, to be fair, right? It's not a thing that I do. But if I do heavy squats like the way I'm saying, then after a week or two, suddenly my aerobic capacity comes up big time.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well. And if people are doing aerobic exercise, is there a particular way that's better to do aerobic exercise that will help with that release of growth hormone?
Well, Aerobic exercise wouldn't be so good to release growth hormone, to be fair. They're not. They're not really for that. So the way to approach it would be to take the effort out of it, so that you make sudden movements or blocky movements in any kind of aerobic exercise, that tends to dam up the circulation of the body. So the more flowing you can make it, right? The more flowing your exercise is, the more you loosen out the body, yeah? And you cause everything to flow, and you pump oxygen through this ground substance or glue that I'm talking about. And that's a benefit to the body, yeah? So opening out the circulation is the way to go if you're doing that aerobic exercise. You know, you may go for a walk up the mountains. Walking up a hill is a very good, in fact, that wouldn't be bad for growth hormone if you do it fast, yeah? So I found, for instance, again, if I, not to take up all your time, Jamie, but I found that walking up mountains, this summer I had a holiday and I walked up a lot of mountains, and I found that massively good for my fitness and very, very good from the point of view that I'm saying here. You know, it opens out the circulation over your whole body.
Okay, brilliant. I think we've covered a huge amount. So just in terms of hormones, because that is definitely an area that we're so conscious of because of how how they affect the body, and everything from metabolizing fat to helping to gain lean tissue to supporting the general functioning of your system. Growth hormone, then, it's going to be largely protein dependent. You actually produce plenty of growth hormone, but it's just a question of releasing it. Isn't that probably the better way?
Well, in the broadest sense, you tend to block it off by taking too many carbohydrates.
Okay, yeah, with the insulin, yeah, absolutely,
Yeah, yeah.
and your body doesn't
So,
release it obviously to the same extent as when
yeah,
you're
for
younger, when
older
you're
people,
growing.
don't release it that well. Yeah, they don't release it that well. Older people find it hard to release it, and a small amount of that amino ore product that we have can go an awful long way. To, you know, we normally say take it at night, at maybe 9:30 or something. Go to bed at 11:30. Take some amino ore. You'll be all right. That will help you release growth hormone, which is a natural process at night, and you know that would be protein retentive, we can say.
Okay, and finally, we've just one question. What supplements would you recommend for increasing energy, Martin? So amino ore at night will help with that fat burning process, help with some growth hormone release. What else would you recommend for energy?
I would think that for the ordinary person, the amino energize is where to start.
Yeah, so the
You
amino
know,
acids.
honestly, I can tell you that I take amino energize, and although I can run on other things and run on not taking things for a while, I always feel the benefit of taking the energize when I do, every single time. And so a lot of the time I would run on taking maybe 4 to 8 of those every day. Yeah. I know people will take more, but
Yeah,
that
I'm
would be
taking about 15.
at a much better level.
Brilliant. Okay, I think that's all we've got time for. I mean, that's brilliant. We've spent 40 minutes. Again, if people watching this at any stage, please do leave comments or leave your questions. We will definitely get round to answering anything that we can, and we'd love to help you in any way that we can. If you're interested in doing a program for a short burst, we're doing a 21-day challenge over the next 21 days. We'll be doing it over the next couple of weeks. We only have a small number of spaces, so please look out for that. You'll see us on social media. And in the meantime, if there's anything else that we can help with, please do let us know. We're hoping to cover inflammation and fats and those kind of areas next week. So if you've anything along those lines, please do let us know. Martin, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for helping out and for providing such crucial information, and you're always such a pleasure to listen to. It's always so interesting. So thank you again. We really, really do appreciate it. And
Thanks, Jamie.
thank you, everybody else.
And goodbye to you all.
Great.
See you
Thank
next
you.
week.
See you next week. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.